Hi everybody. I'm going to read a scientific article published in Cogent Social Sciences. Sociology Research Article. The conceptual penis as a social construct. The conceptual penis as a social construct by Jimmy Lindsay and Peter Boyle. And this article is the reviewing editor is Jamie Halsall, University of Huddersfield, UK. You should say, maybe we can say something about the publishers. It is this guys, Social Science, Cogent Social Science. Cogent Social Science is a multidisciplinary open access journal offering high-quality peer review across the social sciences. From law to sociology, politics to geography and sport to communication studies. Connect your research with a global audience for maximum readership and impact. Social Science is a multidisciplinary open access journal offering high quality peer review across the social sciences. So remember that this article has been peer reviewed. And as a reviewing editor, Jamie Halsall, University of Huddersfield, UK. The conceptual penis as a social construct. Abstract. Anatomical penises may exist, but a pre-operative transgendered woman also have anatomical penises. The penis vis-à-vis maleness is an incoherent construct. We argue that the conceptual penis is better understood not as an anatomical organ, but as a social construct isomorphic to performative toxic masculinity. Through detailed poststructuralist discursive criticism and the example of climate change, this paper will challenge the prevailing and damaging social trope that penises are best understood as male sexual organ and reassign it a more fitting role as a type of masculine performance. Subject: gender studies, social sciences, postmodernism of cultural theory, feminism. Keywords: penis, feminism, machismo, braggadocio, masculinity, climate change. 1. Introduction. The androcentric, scientific and meta-scientific evidence that the penis is the male reproductive organ is considered overwhelmingly and largely uncontroversial. It is true that nearly all male-gendered persons who were also male at birth have a genital organ that, among other purposes, carries the duct of the transfer of sperm during copulation. This organ is usually identified as the penis, and for many males it serves the role of the reproductive organ. There are, however, many examples of persons with penises who will not reproduce, including those who have sustained injury, are unable to coerce a mate, are uninterested in producing offspring, are medically infertile, or identify as asexual. While these examples may still constitute males, it is distinctly fallacious to identify their penises as reproductive organs. Furthermore, there are many women who have penises. These are specifically pre-operative transgendered women and chromosomal males who choose to identify as women without indicating a desire to transition, and despite damaging cultural tropes against their womanhood and femininity, these constitute critical examples of a human demographic for whom their genital organ, while it may be utilized reproductively in some cases, is not best understood as being a male genital organ. Howard 2000. In light of these important facts about the wide diversity of human expression, including when specified to those humans bearing a penile genital organ. Conceptualizing the penis as a specifically male anatomical organ is highly problematic and in critical need of discursive revision. Indeed, the penis vis-à-vis maleness is an incoherent construct. We argue that the conceptual penis is better understood not as an anatomical organ, but as a gender performative, highly fluid social construct. So there you have it. About the authors, maybe we should say. Jamie Lindsay, PhD, and Peter Boyle, ED, Ed.D. represent a dynamic team of independent researchers working for the Southeast Independent Social Science Research Group, whose mission is obvious in its name. While neither uses Twitter, both finding the platform overly reductive, they incorporate careful reading of the relevant academic literature with observations made by searching trending hashtags to derive important social truths with high impact. In this case, their particular fascination with penises and the ways in which penises are socially problematic, especially as a social construct known as a conceptual penis, have opened an avenue to a new frontier in gender and masculinities research that can transform our cultural geographies, mitigate climate change, and achieve social justice. Public interest statement. Penises are problematic, and we don't just mean medical issues like erectile dysfunction and crimes like sexual assault. As a result of our research into the essential concept of the penis and its exchanges with the social and material world, we conclude that penises are not best understood as the male sexual organ or as a male reproductive organ, but instead as an enacted social construct that is both damaging and problematic for society and future generations. The conceptual penis presents significant problems for gender identity and productive identity within social and family dynamics, is exclusionary to disfranchised communities based upon gender or reproductive identity, is an enduring source of abuse for women and other gendered marginalized groups and individuals, is the universal performative source of rape, and is the conceptual driver behind much of climate change. Yes. 2. The conceptual penis. The conceptual penis is the operative representation of the penis in society, as it obtains via a variety of performative acts and statements related to and concerning gender. Conceptualization is the best way to understand the penis, as the notion of penis as a male anatomical organ suffers typical androcentric and metascientific limitations and errors, as it is both overly reductive in failing to represent the full reality of penis-bearing human experiences and incoherent, as the penis itself has little or nothing to do with gender. West and Zimmerman, 1987. Consequently, what coherent role can a monolithic concept like the penis hope either to achieve or to describe for pre-operative and non-operative male to female trans women and post-operative male to male trans men who choose to retain their identity as women? Likewise, what meaning can the anatomical penis as a male organ possibly hold for the gender-fluid individuals or certain other individuals within the queer community? In the paradigm of the dominant penis-centered narrative, we find these questions intrinsically unanswerable. It is also factually incorrect to associate the anatomical penis with male reproductivity, as noted above, and thus even with healthy male sexuality, as any expression should be deemed healthy. While many other forms of male sexuality that are normative are distinctly problematic and unhealthy. For example, Men's rights advocates appropriating the legal, not voluntary but still reasonable standard for search and seizure to issues involving sexual consent, Simons 2005. That is, the conceptual penis is a performative social construct, and it is one that is isomorphic to an especially toxic strain of masculinity. Still, even a social construct, the conceptual penis is hopelessly dominated by recalcitrant social constructions that favor hypermasculinity interpretations of the penis as a notion unjustly associated with high male value. Schwalbe and Volkomir, 2001. Many cisgendered hypermasculine males, for instance, seem to identify those aspects of their masculinity upon which they must obviously depend with the notion that they carry their penises as a symbol of male power, domination, control, capability, desirability, and aggression. The National Coalition for Men compiled a list of synonyms for the word penis, cis. These include the terms beaver basher, cranny axe, custard launcher, dagger, heat-seeking moisture missile, Mayu shooting hot dog gun, pork sword, and yogurt shotgun, 2011. Based upon an appreciable corpus of feminist literature on the penis, this troubling identification results in an effective isomorphism, linking the conceptual penis with toxic hypermasculinity. 2.1 Machismo braggadocio. Inasmuch as masculinity is essentially performative, so too is the conceptual penis. The penis, in the words of Judith Butler, can only be understood through reference to what is part from the signifier. Can only be understood through reference to what is barred from the signifier within the domain of corporal legibility. Butler, Butler, 1993. The penis should not be understood as an honest expression of the performer's intent, should it be represented in a performance of masculinity or hypermasculinity. Thus, the isomorphism between the conceptual penis and what's referred to throughout the discursive feminist literature as toxic hypermasculinity is one defined upon a vector of male cultural machismo braggadocio, with the conceptual penis playing the roles of subject, object, and verb of action. The result of this trichotomy of roles is to place hypermasculine men both within and outside of competing discourses, whose dynamics, as seen via post-structuralist discourse analysis, enact a systematic interplay of power in which hypermasculine men use the conceptual penis to move themselves from powerless subject positions to powerful ones. Confer Foucault, 1972. Machismo is essentially aggressive male pride, whereas braggadocio is a quality of arrogant boastfulness. These together can be taken as a concrete description of the typical performative expression of maleness and hegemonic entrenched male power dynamics through the object of the penis as the social masculine mind conceptualizes it, and the heteronormative female mind too typically has been And the heteronormative female mind too typically has been socially indoctrinated to fetishize it. Through self-objectification in the conceptual penis, hypermasculinity, which abhors weakness in all its forms, seeks to reposition itself from a powerless subject position to a powerful one. Often, hypermasculine behavior therefore centers upon boasting, even if falsely, about size, potency, and desirability. And many social problematic gender demonstrative behaviors define both toxic masculinity and rape culture emanate from the machismo-braggadocio isomorphism as a form of social stagging applied to the objective conceptual penis. Schrock and Schwalbe, 2009. These are precisely the practices that systematically form the objectives of which they speak, mentioned by Foucault's first delineation of post-structuralist discursive analysis, Foucault 1972. Nowhere more does this problematic construction compare than with the hegemonic masculinity and cultural construction represented in the essence of the hard one. Potts 2000. Potts 2000 illustrates that the function of, or lack thereof, of the conceptual penis demonstrates the inscription on individual male bodies of a coitial imperative. The surface of the male body interfuses with the culture to produce the fiction of a dysfunctional, non-penetrative male heterosexuality. This is clear power dynamical repositioning to alleviate the internal psychological struggle for weakness via hypermasculinity and an essential fear of weakness that characterizes hypermasculinity itself. We therefore further agree with Potts that by relinquishing the penis's executive position in sex, male bodies might become differently inscribed and coded for diverse pleasures beyond the phallus/penis. And we insist that understanding the objective isomorphic mapping between phallus and conceptual penis is a necessary discursive element to changing the prevailing penile social paradigm. The constructed intersection of the anatomical penis and the performative conceptual penis defines the problem. The constructed intersection of the anatomical penis and the performative conceptual penis defines the problematic relationship masculinity presented for male bodies and their impact upon women in our pre-post patriarchal societies. In addition to self-objectification, the conceptual penis can, intrinsically to the machismo-braggadocio isomorphic map, express itself as the subject of toxic masculinity. The hypermasculine mentality often conflates the socialized male individual as an inscribed and embodied extension of his conceptual penis. Through this conflation, the hypermasculine male becomes the object of his conceptual penis and expresses himself and his core sense of identity in terms of his conceptual penis as subject. Paxton and Scammon, 2006. Paxton and Scammon, 2006 illustrate this phenomenon clearly in the context of our contemporary masculinely based approaches to economic theory. They write, the premise of neo-capitalist materialist theory implies that sexual identity has objective value. Therefore, the premise of post-capitalist sublimation implies that sexuality serves to oppress the unprivileged. Many discourses concerning a self-justifying totality may be found. Paxton and Cameron, 2006. This, they argue, follows from Lacan's insensitive observation that sexual identity is part of the economy of truth. Paxton and Cameron, 2006. The conceptual penis taken as the subject often has the consequence of promoting an operation of the unprivileged by the misunderstanding that male sexual identity has objective value, particularly in repositioning the powerless hypermasculine male subject as powerful in particularly in repositioning the powerless hypermasculine male subject as powerful in and by means of his conceptual penis. This value is typically defined by the machismo-braggadocio-penile isomorphism between inscriptive objective and discursive, thus prescriptive subject. When hypermasculine males see themselves as potent, dominant, controlling, or desirable, it is often an artifact of the machismo-braggadocio isomorphism acting to make the conceptual penis the subject of their performed sense of identity. Cameron and de Selby, 2004. Note: in a sense, the subject is interpolated into a pre-cultural de-appropriation that includes sexuality as reality. This is clearly experienced via the machismo-braggadocio constructual isomorphism between the conceptual penis and pervasive toxic hypermasculine mentalities and behaviors. For example, this can be seen in male bragging about their sexual conquests and boasting about their sexual performance, but also in male language with speech acts like, "I gave it to her," and "she couldn't get enough of it." In the latter cases, the noun "it" turns the objective conceptual penis into the In the latter case, the noun "it" turns the objective conceptual penis into the perceived subject of female experience, further objectifying the conceptual penis vis-à-vis male gender performance. The conceptual penis thereby becomes a de-appropriative tool through which the penis as subject makes the male sexuality a potent reality in the hypermasculine mind. The ultimately performative nature of hypermasculinity by the machismo-braggadocio isomorphism is most evident in male behaviors, typically of many men, to reject emotional expressions as feminine. For example, compassion is generally avoided under machismo-braggadocio subject performance, as are emotional expressions other than dominant, aggressive ones like anger and irascibility. Ben Zev, Chernetsky, Shen, and Deney, 2012. As Chef, 2006, points out, the hypermasculine pattern leads to competition rather than connection between persons. The performative nature of male competition is reflected into the conceptual penis via the machismo-braggadocio isomorphism, not only through the behavior, but additionally in phrases regarding toxic hypermasculine competitiveness like pissing contest, in which winners are determined by which hypermasculine person is able to project a stream of urine the fastest. Often from a height and dick measuring contest, which needs no elaboration to unveil the direct impact of performative machismo braggadocio competitiveness. We see further linguistic evidence for this phenomenon, as hypermasculine men often use the word dick, causal slang for the penis, as an actionable verb. To dick someone might mean to take advantage of them or to have sex with them, depending upon the constructual context of the application. The inherent connotations of dicking and dicking over the rape culture are here obvious, but run too far afield to our purposes to develop independently. Hypermasculine tropes often take advantages of this penis as verb subjection to express themes of male power and domination, male sexuality, confer the frequent use of the sexually objectifying hypermasculine phrases "I dicked her good," allowing hypermasculine males to intuit the interplay of various discourses behind their subject positions and to shift them accordingly within specific settings, especially imagined and real sexual encounters with real and virtual women or other men as applicable. This they also conflate with expressing power dynamics over other men, as exemplified in the phrase "I dicked over him," which presented iconic male hegemonic thinking per Duncanson 2015. This tendency is easily explained by extrapolation upon McElwain 1999, who demonstrates clearly that sexual identity is fundamentally used in the service of hierarchy. However, according to Werther 1977, it is not so much sexual identity that is fundamentally used in the service of hierarchy, but rather in dialectic, and hence the defining characteristic of sexual identity. The subject is contextualized into a subcultural desituationism that includes sexuality as reality. It is by using the conceptual penis as an actionable verb that hypermasculine male enforces the social hierarchy that oppresses and deinstitutionalizes others to the perceptual elevation of themselves. It is illustrated by Kerbin and Weitzer, 2009, in their analysis of misogyny in rape music, in which they observe content analysis identified 5 gender-related themes in this body of music, themes that contain messages regarding essential male and female characteristics and that espouse a set of conduct norms for men and women. It is also observable in the hyper-performative behavioral trope of manspreading, that is, unconsiderately spreading his legs too wildly in public, for example, on public transport, such as planes, trains, and automobiles, especially subways and buses. The usual excuse given for manspreading is centered directly in the conceptual penis as a male social discourse. The anatomical penis and testicles are attributed as needing space in order to facilitate the male individual's comfort. This behavior seen from the perspective of the conceptual penis as a performative social construct is clearly a dominating occupation of physical space, akin to raping the empty space around him. That is best understood via machismo-braggadocio isomorphism to toxic hypermasculinity. Parkins, 2015. Machismo is the hypermasculine essence, and braggadocio is the hypermasculine expression. The penis as a conceptual element of contemporary thought is naturally isomorphic by notion of machismo braggadocio to the most toxic and problematic themes in hypermasculinity. It is important to be clear that none of these themes are applicable to the anatomical penis, as they are incoherent to many gender identifications that happen to present a penis as a genital organ. Similarly, with the one none of these themes are applicable to the reproductive penis, as they fail to possess relevance for non-reproductive or asexual individuals with a genital penis. The penis in the present context is thus best understood as a constructed social object. A discursive conceptual penis utilizes the enactment of prevailing masculine social tropes, and that concept is isomorphic via machismo braggadocio with many of the most problematic themes in toxic masculinity. Carbon and Weitzer, 2009. 2.2. Climate change and the conceptual penis. Nowhere are the consequences of hypermasculine machismo braggadocio isomorphic identification with a conceptual penis more problematic than concerning the issue of climate change. Climate change is driven by nothing more than it is by certain damaging themes in hypermasculinity that can be understood via the dominant rapacious approach to climate ecology identifiable with the conceptual penis. Our planet is rapidly approaching the much warned about 2 degrees Celsius climate change threshold, and due to patriarchal power dynamics that maintain present capitalist structures, especially with regard to the fossil fuel industry. The concept between hypermasculine dominance of scientific, political, and economic discourses and the irreparable damage to the ecosystem is made clear. Destructive, unsustainable, hegemonically male approaches to pressing environmental policy and action are the predictable result of a raping of nature by a male-dominant mindset. This mindset is best captured by recognizing the role of the conceptual penis holds over masculine psychology. When it is applied to our natural environment, especially virgin environments that can be cheaply despoiled for their material resources and left dilapidated and diminished when our patriarchal approaches to economic gain have stolen their inherent worth, the extrapolation of the rape culture inherent in the conceptual penis becomes clear. At best, climate change is genuinely an example of hyper-patriarchal society metaphorically man-spreading into the global ecosystem. The deep reason for this problematic trend is explained in this essence by McElwain, 1999, where he writes, Pickett suggests that we have to choose between capitalist rationalism and cultural subcapitalism theory. Pickett, 1993. Contemporary capitalist theory, aka neo-capitalist theory, derives its claim on rationalism directly from the hyper-masculine focus in science and society that can best be accounted for by identification with the conceptual penis. Paxton and Scammon 2006 seem to agree, noting that neo-capitalist materialist theory holds that reality comes from the collective unconscious, but only if the premise of dialectic objectivism is invalid. If that is not the case, sexuality has significance. Toxic hypermasculinity derives its significance directly from the conceptual penis and applies itself to supporting neo-capitalist materialism, which is a fundamental driver of climate change, especially in the rampant use of carbon-emitting fossil fuel technologies and careless domination of virgin natural environments. We need not delve deeply into criticism of dialectic objectivism or their relationships with masculine tropes like the conceptual penis to make effective criticism of exclusionary dialectic of objectivism. All perspectives matter. One practical recommendation that follows from this analysis is that climate change research should be better served by a change in how we engage in the discourses of political and science, of politics and science, avoiding the hypermasculine penis-centric take whenever possible. Kaiser and Kronsel, 2013. 3. Conclusion. We conclude that the penises are not best understood as the male sexual organ or as a male reproductive organ, but instead as an enacted social construct that is both damaging and problematic for society and future generations. The conceptual penis presents significant problems for gender identity and reproductive identity within social and family dynamics, is exclusionary to disenfranchised communities based upon gender or reproductive identity, is an enduring source of abuse for women and other gendered marginalized groups and individuals, is the universal performative source of rape, and is the conceptual driver behind much of climate change. An explicit isomorphic relationship exists between the conceptual penis and the most problematic themes in toxic masculinity, and that relationship is mediated by the machismo braggadocio aspect of male hypermasculinity through and performance. A change in our discourses in science, technology, policy, economics, society, and various communities is needed to protect marginalized groups, promote the advancement of women, trans and gendered queer individuals, including non-gendered and gender-skeptical people, and to remedy environmental impacts that follow from climate change driven by capitalist and neo-capitalist over-reliance on hypermasculine themes and exploitation and exploitative utilization of fossil fuels. Yeah, so this is the scientific article that was published in 2017 in Cogent Social Sciences. But now we're going to see who were the real authors. I read from skeptic.com. The Conceptual Penis as a Social Construct, a SOKAL-STYLE Hoax on Gender Studies, by Peter Bogosian. I don't know how to read, but he's he's playing Peter Boyle, and James Lindsay is playing Jamie Lindsay. Note from the editor: every once in a while it is necessary and desirable to expose extreme ideologies for what they are by carrying out their arguments and rhetoric to their logical and absurd conclusion, which is why we are proud to publish this expose of a hoax article published in a peer-reviewed journal today. Its ramifications are unknown, but one hopes it will help rein in extremism in this and related areas. Michael Shermer, fellow atheist and skeptic. The conceptual penis as a social construct is a SOKAL-STYLE hoax on gender studies. Follow the author at Peter, I don't know how to pronounce that, and God Doesn't, at God Doesn't. The hoax. The androcentric scientific and meta-scientific evidence that the penis is the male reproductive organ is considered overwhelmingly and largely uncontroversial. That's how we began. We used this preposterous sentence to open a paper consisting of 3,000 words of utter nonsense posing as academic scholarship. Then a peer-reviewed academic journal in the social sciences accepted and published it. This paper should never have been published, titled "The Conceptual Penis as a Social Construct." Our paper argues that the penis vis-à-vis maleness is an incoherent construct. We argue that the conceptual penis is better understood not as an anatomical organ, but as a gender performative, highly fluid social construct. As if to prove philosopher David Hume's claim that there is a deep gap between what is and what ought to be. Our should never have been published paper was published in the open access, meaning that articles are freely accessible and not behind a paywall. Peer-reviewed journal Cogent Social Sciences. In case the PDF is removed, you can find it there. Assuming the pen names Jamie Lindsay and Peter Boyle, and writing for the fictitious Southeast Independent Social Research Group, we wrote an absurd paper loosely composed in the style of post-structuralist discursive gender theory. The paper was ridiculous by intention, essentially arguing that penises shouldn't be thought of as male genital organs, but as damaging social constructions. We made no attempt to find out what post-structuralist discursive gender theory actually means. We assumed that if we were merely clear in our moral implications that maleness is intrinsically bad and that the penis is somehow at the root of it, we could get the paper published in a respectable journal. Not spreading a complaint levied against men for sitting with their legs spread wide is akin to raping them this episode. This already damning characterization of our hoax understates our paper's lack of fitness for academic publication by orders of magnitude. We didn't try to make the paper queer, and instead we stuffed it full of jargon like discursive and isomorphism, nonsense like arguing that hypermasculine men are both inside and outside of certain discourses at the same time. Red flag phrases like pre-post patriarchal societies, lewd references to slang terms of the penis, insulting phrasing regarding men, including referring to some men who choose not to have children as being unable to coerce a mate. Delusions to rape. We stated that menstruating A complaint levied against men who, for sitting with their legs spread wide, is akin to raping the empty space. After completing the paper, we read it carefully to ensure it didn't say anything meaningful. And as neither one of us could determine what it's actually about, we deemed it a success. Consider some examples. Here's a paragraph from the conclusion, which was held in high regard by both reviewers. Oh my goodness. My stomach. We conclude that penises are not best understood as the male sexual organ or as a male reproductive organ, but instead as an enacted social construct that is both damaging and problematic for society and future generations. The conceptual penis presents significant problems for gender identity and reproductive identity within social and family dynamics. It is exclusionary to disenfranchised communities based upon gender and reproductive identity. It is an enduring source of abuse for women and other gender marginalized groups and individuals. Is the universal performative source of rape and is the conceptual driver behind much of climate change. You read that right. We argue that climate change is conceptually caused by penises. How do we defend that assertion like this? Destructive, unsustainable, hegemonically made approaches to addressing environmental policy and action are the predictable results of a raping of nature by a male dominant mindset. This mindset is best captured by recognizing the role of the conceptual penis holds over masculine psychology. When it is applied to our natural environment, especially virgin environments that can be chiefly despoiled for their material resources and left dilapidated and diminished when our patriarchal approaches to economic gain have stolen their inherent worth. The extrapolation of the rape culture inherent in the conceptual penis becomes clear. Like this, which we claim follows from the above by means of an algorithmically generated nonsense quotations from a fictitious paper which we referenced and cited explicitly in the paper. Toxic hypermasculinity derives its significance directly from the conceptual penis and applies itself to supporting neo-capitalist materialism, which is a fundamental driver of climate change. Especially in the rampant use of carbon-emitting fossil fuels, technologies, and careless domination of virgin natural environments, we need not delve deeply into criticism of dialectic objectivism or the relationships with masculine tropes like the conceptual penis to make effective criticism of exclusionary dialectic objectivism, all perspectives matter. If you're having trouble understanding what any of that means, there are two important points to consider. First, we don't understand it either. Nobody does. This problem should have rendered it unpublishable in all peer-reviewed academic journals. Second, these examples are remarkably lucid compared to much of the rest of the paper. Consider this final example. Inasmuch as masculinity is essentially performative, so too is the conceptual penis. The penis, in the words of Judith Butler, can only be understood through reference to what is barred from the signifier within the domain of corporal legibility. Butler 1993. The penis should not be understood as an honest expression of the performer's intent, should it be presented in a performance of masculinity or hypermasculinity. Thus, the isomorphism between the conceptual penis and what's referred to throughout discursive feminist literature as toxic masculinity is one defined upon a vector of male cultural machismo braggadocio, with the conceptual penis playing the roles of subject, object, and verb of action. The result of this trichotomy of roles is to place hypermasculine men both within and outside the competing discourses whose dynamics, as seen via post-structuralist discourses analysis, enact a systematic interplay of power in which hypermasculine men use the conceptual penis to move themselves from powerless subject positions to powerful ones. Foucault, 1972. No one knows what any of this means because it is complete nonsense. Anyone claiming to is pretending, full stop. It gets worse. Not only is the text ridiculous, so are the references. Most of our references are quotations from papers and figures in the field that barely make sense in the context of the text. Others were obtained by searching keywords and grabbing papers that sounded plausibly connected to the words we cited. We read exactly zero of the sources we cite by intention as part of the hoax, and it gets still worse. Some references cite the Post-modern generator, a website coded in the 1990s by Andrew Bolcott, featuring an algorithm based on NEU physicist Alan Solkal's method of hoaxing a cultural studies journal called Social Text that returns a different fake post-modern paper every time the page is reloaded. We cited and quoted from the Post-modern generator library. This includes nonsense quotations incorporated in the body of the paper and citing 5 different papers generated in the course of 5 minutes. Five references to fake papers in journals that don't exist is astonishing, and it's on its own, but it's incredible given that the original paper we submitted had only 16 references total. It has 20 now, after a reviewer asked for more examples. Nearly a third of our references in the original paper go to fake sources from a website mocking the fact that this kind of thing is brainlessly possible, particularly in academic fields corrupted by postmodernism. More on that later. Two of the fake journals cited are deconstructions from elsewhere and /or press, taken directly from algorithmically generated fictitious citations on the postmodern generator. Another cites the fictitious researcher SQ Scammeron, whose invented name appears in the body of the paper several times. In response, the reviewers noted that our references are sound even after an allegedly careful cross-referencing check done in the final round of editorial approval. No matter the effort put into it, it appears one simply cannot jump Cogent Social Sciences shock. We didn't originally go looking to hoax Cogent Social Sciences, however. Had we, this story would be only half as interesting and 10th as apparently damning. Cogent Social Sciences was recommended to us by another journal, Norma, International Journal for Masculinity Studies, a Taylor and Francis journal. Norma rejected the conceptual penis as such as construct, but thought it had a great fit for the Cogent series, which operates independently under the Taylor and Francis imprimatur. In their rejection letter, the editors of Norma wrote, "We feel that your manuscript would be well suited to our Cogent series." A multidisciplinary open journal platform for the rapid dissemination of peer-reviewed research across the disciplines. Transferring your manuscript saves you time because there is no need for you to reformat or resubmit your work manually, provided faster publication because previous reviews are transferred with your manuscript. To ensure all work is open to everyone, the Cogent series invited a pay what you want contribution towards the cost of open access publishing if your article is accepted for publication. This can be paid by you as author or by your institution or research funder. Many institutions and funders now provide financial support for open access publishing. We took them up on the transfer, and Cogent Social Sciences eventually accepted. The conceptual penis as a social construct. The reviewers were amazingly encouraging. The reviewers were amazingly encouraging, giving us very high marks in nearly every category. For example, one reviewer graded our thesis statement sound and praised it thusly. It captures the issues of hypermasculinity through a multidimensional and non-linear process. Which we take to mean that it wanders aimlessly through many layers of jargon and nonsense. The other reviewer marked the thesis along with the entire paper, understanding, in every applicable category. They didn't accept the paper outright, however. Cogent Social Sciences reviewer at #2 offered us 5 relatively easy fixes to make our paper better. We effortlessly completed them in about 2 hours, putting in a little more nonsense about manspreading, which we alleged to be a cause of climate change and dick measuring context. The publication of our hoax reveals two problems. One relates to the business model of pay to publish open access journals. The other lies at the heart of academic fields like gender studies. The pay to publish open access journal problem. Cogent Social Sciences is a multidisciplinary open access journal offering high quality peer review across the social sciences. From law to sociology, politics to geography, and sport to communication studies. Connect your research with a global audience for maximum leadership and impact. One of the biggest questions facing peer-reviewed publishing is, are pay-to-publish open access journals the future of economic publishing? We seem to answer the question with a large red no. There is, however, an asterisk on the no. That is, the peer review process in pay-to-publish open access journals cannot achieve quality assurance without extremely stringent safeguards, which will come as no surprise to anyone familiar with the debate. There's nothing necessarily or intrinsically wrong with either open access or pay-to-publish journals, and they may ultimately prove valuable. However, in the short term, pay-to-publish may be significant problem because of the inherent tendencies toward conflicts of interests. Profit trump academic quality. That is, the profit motive is dangerous because ethics are expensive. The pay-to-publish mechanism should not affect the quality control standards of the peer review process. Cogent Open Access claims to address this problem by using a blind review process. Does it work? Perhaps not always. If this case is any indication, some pay-to-publish journals happily exploit career-minded academicians and will publish anything. The famous Seinfeld hoax paper is that case here. Gender studies scholars committed to the integrity of their academic discipline should hope so, and they have reason for suspecting it. For a minimal payment of 625, Cogent Social Sciences were ready to publish the conceptual penis as a social construct. There seems to be a deeper problem here, however. Suspecting we may be dealing with predatory pay-to-publish outlet, we were surprised that an otherwise apparently legitimate Taylor and Francis journal directed us to contribute to the Cogent series. Authors note, we leave it to the reader to decide whether or not Norma, International Journal for Masculinity Studies, constitutes a legitimate journal, but all appearances is run by genuine academic experts in the field, and is not a predatory money mill. The problem then may rest not only with the pay-to-publish journals, but also with the infrastructure that supports them. In sum, it's difficult to place Cogent Social Sciences on a spectrum ranging from a rigorous academic journal in gender studies to predatory pay-to-publish money mill. First, Cogent Social Sciences operates with a legitimizing imprimatur of Taylor and Francis, with which it is clearly closely partnered. Second, it's held out as a high-quality open access journal by Directory of Open Access Journals, DOAG, which is intended to be a reliable list of such journals. In fact, it carries several more affiliations with similar credentialing organizations. These facts cast considerable doubt on the facile defense of Cogent Social Sciences, a sham journal that accepted the conceptual penis as a social construct simply to make money. As a result, wherever Cogent Social Sciences belongs on the spectrum just noted, there are significant reasons to believe that much of the problem lies within the very concept of any journal being a rigorous academic journal in gender studies. Postmodernism, gender studies, and the canon of knowledge. In 1996, Alan Sokal, a professor of physics at New York University, published the bogus paper Transgressing the Boundaries Towards a Transformative Hermeneutics of Quantum Gravity. Yeah, in the prominent cultural studies journal Social Text, which is in turn published by Duke University Press. The publication of this nonsense paper in a prestigious journal with a strong postmodernist orientation delivered a devastating blow to postmodernism's intellectual legitimacy. Subsequently, Sokal and the Belgian physicist Jean Brimont noted in their 1997 book Fashionable Nonsense that certain kinds of ideas can become so fashionable that the critical faculties required for the peer review process are compromised, allowing outright nonsense to be published, so long as it looks or sounds a certain way or promotes certain values. It was standing up upon Sokal's shoulders that we proceeded with our hoax, though we perceived a slightly different need. Sokal's aim was to demonstrate that fashionable linguistic abuses, especially relying upon puns and wordplay related to scientific terms, apparent scientific authority, conformity with certain leftist political norms, and flattery of the academic preconceptions of an editorial board would be sufficient to secure publication and thus expose shoddy academic rigor on the part of postmodernist scholarship and social commentary. A primary target of Sokal's hoax was the appropriation of mathematical and scientific terminology that postmodernist quote scholars didn't understand and didn't use correctly. We included isomorphism and vector in our paper in subtle homage to Sokal. Fashionable nonsense pays particular attention to postmodernists' abuse of mathematical and scientific terminology. That is, Sokal took aim at an academic abuse by postmodernists and hit his target dead center. His paper could only have been published if the postmodernists who approved it exhibited overwhelming political motivations and a staggering lack of understanding of basic mathematics and physics terminology. The scientific community was exuberant that Sokal burst the postmodern bubble because they were fed up with postmodernists misusing scientific and mathematical terms to produce jargon-laden nonsense and bizarre social commentary carrying the apparent gravitas of scientific terminology. It appears that Social Text accepted Sokal's paper specifically because Sokal was a recognized scientist who appeared to have seen the light. Our hoax was similar, of course, but it aimed to expose a more troubling bias. The most potent among the human excuse my Scandinavian pronunciation here, but human susceptibilities, to corruption by fashionable nonsense is the temptation to uncritically endorse moral fashionable nonsense. That is, we assume we could publish outright nonsense provided it looked the part and portrayed a moralizing attitude that comported with the editor's moral convictions. Like any imposter, ours had to dress the part, though we made our disguise as ridiculous and caricatured as possible. Not so much affixing an obvious fake mustache to make its true identity as donning two of them as false eyebrows. SOKAL exposed an infatuation with academic puffery that characterizes the entire project of academic postmodernism. Our aim was smaller yet more pointed. We intended to test the hypothesis that flattery of the academic left's moral architecture in general and of the moral orthodoxy in gender studies in particular is the overwhelming determiner of publication in an academic journal in the field. That is, we sought to demonstrate that a desire for a certain moral view of the world to be validated could overcome the critical assessment required for legitimate scholarship. Particularly, we suspected that gender studies is crippled academically by an overriding, almost religious belief that maleness is the root of all evil. On the evidence, our suspicion was justified. As a matter of deeper concern, there is unfortunately some reason to believe that our hoax will not break the relevant spell. First, Alan Sokal's hoax, now more than 20 years old, did not prevent the continuation of bizarre postmodernist scholarship. In particular, it did not lead to a general tightening of standards that would have blocked our own hoax. Second, people rarely give up on their moral attachments and ideological commitments just because they're shown to be out of alignment with reality. Yeah, something I know very well. In the 1950s, psychologist Leon Festinger revealed the operation of the well-known phenomenon called cognitive dissonance when he infiltrated a small UFO cult, like aliens, known as the Seekers. When the apocalyptic beliefs of the Seekers failed to materialize as predicted, Festinger documented that many cultists did not accept the possibility that the facts appended their core beliefs, but instead rationalized them. Many Seekers adopted a subsequent belief that they play a role in saving the world with their fidelity. That is, they believed that doomsday-bringing extraterrestrials were so impressed by their faith that they decided not to destroy the world after all. It is therefore plausible that some gender studies scholars will argue that the conceptual penis makes sense as we described it. That men do often suffer from machismo braggadocio, and that there is an isomorphism between these concepts via some personal toxic hypermasculine conception of their penises. We sincerely hope not. Conclusion. A two-pronged problem for academia. There are at least two deeply troublesome diseases damaging the credibility of the peer review system in the fields such as gender studies. One, the echo chamber of moral-driven, fashionable nonsense coming out of the postmodernist social sciences in general and gender studies departments in particular, and two, the complex problem of pay-to-pay journals with lax standards that cash in on the ultra-competitive publish or perish academic environment. At least one of these sicknesses led to the conceptual penis as a social construct being published as a legitimate piece of academic scholarship. and we can expect proponents of each to lay primary blame upon the other. The conceptual penis as a social construct underwent a blind peer review process and yet was accepted by for publication. This needs serious explaining. Part of the fault may fall on the open access pay-to-publish model, but the rest falls on the entire academic enterprise, collectively referred to as gender studies, as we see it. Gender studies is in its current form. Gender studies, as we see it, gender studies in its current form needs to do some serious house cleaning. Well, house cleaning. I mean, okay. Anyway, to repeat a critical point, this paper was published in a social science journal that was recommended to us as reputable by a supposedly reliable academic source. Cogent Social Sciences has the trappings of a legitimate peer-reviewed journal. There is no way around the fact that the publication of this paper in such a journal must point to some problem with the current state of academic publishing. The components of the problems are: it seems reducible to just two: academic misfashions, I don't know the word, arising from paid to publish open access financial decision making and unconscionable pseudo-academic inbreeding, contaminating, if not defining the postmodernist theory-based social science. I mean, I don't think you have to. I think the whole. It's not a science. It's not a scientific activity. The so-called gender studies is not a standard. It's not a biological study of gender. It's not a. It's just. It's like creationism, trying to find. It's the reverse of the scientific method. On the other hand, no one is arguing, nor has anyone any reason to argue, that respectable journals like Nature and countless others have adopted a peer review process that is fundamentally flawed or in any meaningful way corrupt. Much of the peer review system remains the gold standard for the advancement of human knowledge. The problem lies within a nebula of marginal journals, predatory pay-to-publish journals, and possibly to some degree open access journals. Although it may largely be discipline specific, as we have originally hoped to discover, this is, after all, not the first time postmodernist academia has fallen for a hoax. This hoax, however, was rooted in the moral and political basis, masquerading as rigorous academic theory. Working in a based environment, we successfully segregated utter nonsense with a combination of fashionable moral sentiments and impenetrable jargon. Cogent Social Sciences happily swallowed the pill. It left utter nonsense easy to disguise. The publish or perish academic environment is its own poison that needs a remedy. It gives rise to predatory profit-driven journals with few or no academic standards that take advantage of legitimate scholars pressured into publishing their works at all costs, even if it is marginal or dubious. Many of these scholars are victims both of a system that is forcing them to publish more papers and to publish them more often, to the detriment of research quality, and of the predatory journals that offer to sell them the illusion of academic prestige. Certainly, we have every reason to suspect that a majority of the other academics who have published in social science, Cogent Social Science and other journals in the Cogent Social series are genuine scholars who have been cheated by what may be a weak peer review process with a highly polished edifice. Our question about the fundamental integrity of fields like gender studies seems much more pressing. Nonetheless, the conceptual penis as a social construct should not have been published on its merits because it was actively written to avoid having any merits whatsoever. The paper is academically worthless nonsense. The question that now needs to be answered is, how can we restore the reliability of the peer review process? Notes. 1. More here. Read about Dr. Martin van Ostron's famous HOAX paper. 2. Portland State University has found dedicated to paying fees for open access journals, and this particular journal qualified for disbursement. For ethical reasons, however, we did not apply for funding, which in this case was virtually guaranteed. Instead, the article was externally funded by an independent party. We never received an invoice from the journal. We did not pay to have this published. Our suspicion arose from the countless examples documented on the anonymously run Twitter feed at Real Peer Review. Okay, so I just felt that I had to go through this tremendously funny and also tremendously important hoax, because it shows that not only religious people can, I mean, it's not that bullshit ended when kind of with the death of God, so to speak. Bullshit continues, and it continues very much by the means of group pressure and social psychology. And I mean, I think postmodernism is at least as stupid as Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, but because it's fashionable and because of social pressure and virtue signaling and all that, people take postmodernism seriously, despite that it's anti-scientific, it's complete nonsense, it's as stupid as creationism, but people just continue. And it's not just funny in the end, it's kind of dangerous. Yeah, so I'm gonna thank I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce everything correctly. I'm a Scandinavian Neanderthal, so you have to be a bit patient with me. I hope I see you on the Gin and Tonic show. And if you don't know what the Gin and Tonic show is, it's a weekly call-in discussion show that focuses on the religion of Islam and related topics in juxtaposition to the propaganda of Muslim apologists and far-right conservative Christians, blah, 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 in order to educate the viewers on Islamic history, scripture, theology, and politics, blah, 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 blah. So I hope I see you on the Gin and Tonic show, and be a skeptic person, do real falsifiable science, and keep fighting stupid kinds of totalitarianism and nonsense and anti-scientific ideologies. Thanks, everybody.